God, I love that song. The theme song.
Thanks, man.
It is I, your friend, Brendan Smith.
And it is I, your other friend, John Ross Bowie.
And we are the Record Junkies.
Welcome to the show. Brendan, what are you consuming right now? What are you taking in?
I'm indulging in Coca-Cola.
No, I mean like on a media level.
Oh, on a media level.
We're not doing brand placement this early, are we?
Sure. RC Cola. Media, what am I consuming? Well, lately, I'll tell you what has changed my life as the world burns.
Okay.
Because the world is burning,
Sure.
I need a timeout.
Yeah, by all means.
I need a mental timeout. And the mental timeout that I've given myself is the Yacht Rock documentary.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it so much that I forget what it's streaming on.
I want to say Max.
Okay.
I want to say Max.
That feels right.
And it's funny, to that point, one of the opening talking heads in the documentary is Fred Armisen pointing out that all of the lead singers have this sound. All the lead singers of these bands in question have a sound that make you feel like it's going to be okay. You know, it's gonna be
which is
okay.
why I'm watching that documentary and listening to that music almost exclusively.
Exclusively, really?
Yes.
Really?
John, you might not know this about me, but I like to relax at night by making playlists.
I did know that about you. Yes, that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast together. But so have you made like the definitive yacht rock?
Yes, I have.
Now, what were we calling yacht rock before the term was coined?
I would say we were calling it soft.
We were calling it soft rock, right?
It's sort of, for me, it was always like the AM hits of the late 70s.
Right. See, I'm hesitant to I feel like soft rock might be too large an umbrella for what we're talking about.
Yes.
Now, you felt there were some omissions in the yacht rock
Yes, 'cause
documentary.
we did. John and I had coffee one day at a restaurant, along with our friend Richard Sheltinga, who's here.
How you doing?
Manning the controls for this particular program.
On the ones and the twos playing the stacks of wax.
Sexy Richard Sheltinga. But we had a conversation at a coffee shop one day where I said, I enjoyed the documentary. I love this music.
But you had notes.
But I had notes.
Okay.
Yeah, I had notes about the documentary. Do you want to hear some of
I
my
would
thoughts?
like to, very much.
Well, the documentary, the Yacht Rock documentary, is based on sort of the premise that the guys who came up with the term yacht rock are the ones that
Pretty
get to
recently,
define
within
it.
like the past 15 years, was that? Or
They
no,
had a web series.
They had a web series before that was really even a thing.
And was this a Dan Harmon group of people that put together this web series? Do you know?
No, you know what it was? You're close. Dan Harmon was behind the show called Channel 101. I want to say there was a collection of it was a monthly video show.
Yes.
Where people would go and watch it live and people would vote on who won. And then the winners would be posted online. And the guys who did Yacht Rock started to do this adjacent.
It was Harmon adjacent, as our friend Jimmy Pardo would say, a bunch of Los Feliz nerds,
Yes.
comedy
Well
nerds, put this project together. And they spoofed the idea of a bunch of soft rock musicians hanging out in the late 70s. Michael McDonald, Christopher Cross, Kenny Loggins. They are the ones that coined the term yacht rock. And the movie kind of basically says that they get to define what yacht rock is.
Okay.
I think yacht rock has expanded. I think it's gotten bigger.
Okay.
Sirius XM,
Okay.
love it or hate it,
Yeah.
has a yacht rock channel, and they've
Okay.
had it for a while. And they play a little varied music
Okay.
versus what the documentary got into. Like the premise of the documentary is basically that yacht rock starts with Steely Dan's album Asia.
Uh-huh.
And
Which I'll buy. I think that's fair.
right,
Yeah.
and just their attention to detail and their prowess in the studio and their use of the best musicians in LA spurs
and their
this
use of cocaine.
and their use of cocaine.
Yeah.
It's the 70s. I mean, it's the
No, I say it without judgment. I'm just,
it's the critical elements of
Yeah.
all 70s records.
I think so.
Did you know that the current the last edition of Rumors comes with an 8-ball?
I'm sure it should.
But anyway, the long story short is that the success of Asia spawns like a whole movement. And I say yacht rock starts before Asia.
With whom?
Well, I think that, look, everything starts with the Beatles as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
However, I think the singer-songwriter thing of the late 60s, early 70s, I think James Taylor and John Denver are just as important to yacht rock as a genre as
Interesting.
Toto and America.
Interesting, but empirically wrong. America. I wouldn't even put America in there. I feel what you're talking about here.
Now we're fighting. I don't want to do this podcast anymore. America.
This interview's over, Flip.
Arguably the most important yacht rock band of all time.
Okay, what you're talking about, those band, the singer-songwriter genre owes a far greater debt to sort of mellow country rock. Here is what I think makes yacht rock, and it's actually articulated very well by Questlove, who was in the documentary, who is fast becoming like our most interesting cultural critic, I think. But his point is yacht rock is music for dancing in your chair. Aha. So and I thought that was like, yes, that's it. That's exactly what's missing from these other acts that you just mentioned is a certain a lack of funkiness, a lack of syncopation, if you will, if I can get just ever so slightly wonky. There's nothing about Horse with No Name that makes me want to dance in my chair. What it makes me want to do is smoke an enormous bowl of indica and not much else, and maybe finish those Trader Joe's burritos in the fridge. But there's something, the stuff that the documentary covers is music for dancing in your chair. Can we hear Steal Away by Robbie Dupree? Can I trouble you for Steal Away?
Sure. Isn't it nice to have Richard on the spot to be able to do that?
We can cut this part or keep it. It's gold. No, but I mean, I'll make a point in a moment here. Yeah, and it's not my point. Again, it's Questlove's, and I yield to him on this. But here we go. Okay, now listen to that.
Robbie Dupree. Hey, I'm going to be at the Sound Warehouse on San Mateo and Manal on Saturday, giving away all the K-Jazz giveaways.
Snare, kick, snare, kick, snare.
Stop by and say hi.
Snare, kick, snare, kick, snare.
K-Jazz 93.1.
So that particular little musical hiccup there that the documentary refers to as the doobie bounce, depending on who you believe, it starts with What a Fool Believes.
Yes.
I think that has me. You put that on, and I'm going to dance in my chair. Now, will I stand up? Absolutely not. Absolutely, I will not be standing up for that. But I will dance in my chair. Ditto, Ride Like the Wind. Ditto, What a Fool Believes, obviously, taking it to the streets. Fire and Rain? I'm not going to dance in my chair to Fire and Rain. I'm going to be sad.
Okay, but see, here's the thing. This is where I go. I think the definition of yacht rock is bigger now. Because to me, it also involves that bowl of indica, as you say.
Okay.
But for me, it's you're sitting out on the porch and there's a lovely sunset going down over the mountains. And maybe you've got those burritos from Trader Joe's, or maybe you're just enjoying a cocktail and the indica.
I see.
Or maybe you're on a boat and maybe you're lounging and relaxing and drowning out the noise and the horror and the confusion and the societal collapse that we're dealing with in real life.
And it had to feel that way, actually.
Timeout.
It had to feel that way in the late 70s, too, with the gas crisis. And, we were still in the aftershock of Watergate in Vietnam.
Yeah. You just wanted to drive around the back roads of California in some sort of muscle car.
Yeah.
With a woman with long hair.
A state where neither of us lived in the late 70s.
But we watched television.
But we watched TV, absolutely.
And we watched movies.
Yeah.
And we watched chips.
Yeah, I was going to say we wanted to be pulled over by a chip.
And we imagined ourselves there. And so
did.
that's where so for me, it's the relaxing. So I think America, Horse with No Name, I hear that. I get the same feeling when I hear Steal Away by Robbie Dupree.
Okay.
It just takes me to just a mellow place where life is good. Life is easy.
So for you, it's not so much about dancing in your chair. It's just about what lowers your heart rate.
1,000%.
Oh, well put.
That is yacht rock plus the cocktail plus the indica.
Okay.
Okay. Because also,
so
by the way,
it's interesting too because the indica and the cocktail are for the consumption. The creation has to be cocaine, apparently. Although you can't really. Here's the one thing I have about yacht rock. Apparently, those guys were just doing a lot of booger sugar.
Yes.
And I don't hear that level of like manic energy, but go ahead. What were you going to say?
Because they were different guys.
Okay.
They weren't as angry as the metal guys or the punk guys.
So they were using cocaine just to get real specific and real like, I got to get the softest kick drum sound in the world.
Absolutely. Versus the way that Black Sabbath did cocaine in the 70s.
Which was to hurt you.
And to talk to Satan.
And carve open your skull.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've actually... I've never, I just wiped my nose for no reason, but I've actually never done cocaine. But with the people I know who have, and you can believe that or not, but it's actually true. But the people I know who have say, yeah, it does lean to whatever you're into, cocaine is going to make you extra specific about it.
Well, I know just from, I've never done cocaine myself.
Really?
Yeah, a few times.
I didn't believe that anyway. Carry on.
But the coke is a tool of the rock industry because nothing gives you the same kind of high as being on stage in front of 10, 15, 20,000 people.
Okay.
And when you come off stage amped like Jesus,
why would you not want to stay that way?
You want to stay that way.
Yeah.
And so it's around. And it was around from the beginning. So it becomes a tool of the industry.
Interesting.
And then the people, the hangers on and the industry people that enjoyed the party, it was just everywhere. So it's in every studio. Richard Cheltinga, am I wrong?
I think also creative people are inherently insecure, and cocaine gives them an extra ego boost.
Well said. So if you're high school kids from the Valley, like the guys in Toto, or you're working class guys from Birmingham, like Black Sabbath, cocaine works for both of you.
Wow.
And
so what you're telling me is that it brings people together in these divided times.
It really
that is
does.
a ringing endorsement if ever I've heard one.
It really does. But the last thing I'll say about yacht rock, as we dive deep into this nerdy discussion, is that the yacht rock, the subject of yacht rock, never goes off the rails. We're not talking about heartache too much. We're definitely not talking about societal collapse.
No.
We're not talking about war.
No.
We're just talking about having a decent mellow time.
Yeah.
And maybe you've broken up with someone, but you're still looking forward to the day when you'll meet someone again.
You do have to. You do have such a long way to go, and to make it to the border of Mexico, and
That's
it's
right.
like the wind. But that's an anomaly. That song has stakes that the rest of the canon simply does not have.
Yeah.
The rest of the time he's sailing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well said.
It's Yacht Rock, a documentary. Fun little bit of wordplay there, and streaming on Max, I believe.
And by the way, you mentioned Questlove earlier. Maybe we can talk about this on the next episode of Record Junkies. Questlove has a brand new documentary about Sly and the Family Stone, which could be an entire episode. And it's marvelous.
I bet it is. Sly is a fascinating guy. That is...
Talk about cocaine.
Yeah, he does. He does.
As we record this, you recently went to a gig that I missed that I should have gone to.
I think you
the actor Michael Shannon and the great musician Jason Narducci have a REM cover band, and you went to see them in Los Angeles at the Bellwether Theater.
Which is a beautiful venue, by the way. Have you been?
Yes, I have. I saw Wilco there.
Really nice venue. So speaking of Wilco, they've also got John Sturratt on bass for this combo. Johnny Worster from Superchunk and Bob Mould Band and Mountain Goats. Name checked in an old Dead Milkman song because he's Philly royalty.
Yep.
They were touring to support the 40th anniversary of Fables of the Reconstruction, since REM isn't touring to support the 40th anniversary. So they did that album top to bottom, and then in order, and then did sort of an REM greatest hits set afterwards. And you close your eyes, and it's remarkably convincing.
Really,
Shannon sounds a lot like Stipe. Now, what's interesting is they've also done this with, I think they did one with did they do one with The Queen is Dead? They did some Smiths album. They did a Velvet Underground album where they went out and played around Chicago. But I can't see any of them being as good as this version because Shannon just really sounds, he has this wonderful nasal but still strong voice, the way Stipe does. And they did something really risky, which was they came out for an encore, and it was just Narducci and Shannon, and Narducci sat at the edge of the stage and did South Central Rain. And just real no frills, just guitar and voice, and it sounded really good.
Wow.
And he's fun
was
to watch,
Jason
too.
playing bass as he
playing
usually
guitar.
does? He was playing
playing guitar on this, and I talked to him afterwards.
You did?
I did talk to Jason. I kind of know Jason, and he's a lovely human being.
He was on my old podcast.
Yeah, he did your old podcast, and I've met him at Superchunk shows and things like that. Really sweet guy, and he said that he was more intimidated to play the Mike Mills bass parts and sing than he would have been to play the Peter Buck guitar parts and sing. And I was surprised to hear that.
That's an incredible detail. Michael Shannon and I spent the entire summer of 1998 drinking together.
Fantastic.
It's a true story.
Fantastic.
Almost every single night of the week, we would meet at O'Rourke's, which was the bar across the street from Steppenwolf Theater.
Oh, I knew it
doing
was
a
in
play there.
Chicago. I could just tell from every other detail of that story. I knew we were in Chicago. But
Yeah,
go ahead. Give me
and
an
there was
exact
a 5
location.
a.m. bar nearby. So
Yeah,
we
of
would
course
leave
there was.
O'Rourke's at 2 and go to the 5 a.m. bar. And I almost died that summer because nobody could drink like 1998 Michael Shannon.
I bet he could put it away.
He was a kind of a mystery back then. Everyone
He's
knew
still
he
an
was
enigma.
Yeah.
He's still kind of an enigma. I met him for the first time last night, and
I should have gone.
he's an
I'm
interesting
idiot.
cat. But you know what's interesting is that the same sort of
Will you
like
be my friend, Brendan?
that's beautiful.
Will you be my friend?
That's not a bad impression.
Will you be my
I would
friend,
like to
Brendan?
see you. You know what you have to work on for next time? You have to work on. That's a good Michael Shannon. Now I have to hear you doing Michael Shannon doing Michael Stipe,
Oh,
and then you have to do something he does, which is Michael Shannon doing Michael Stipe doing Steven Tyler, because they closed with REM's cover of Toys in the Attic.
nice. So, without further ado, I'm so chomping at the bit to turn you on to what I've been thinking about.
So the structure of this show is that you're going to turn me on to a record, or maybe reintroduce a record to me, and I will do the same for you.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're about to present. You don't know what I'm about to present.
Right.
The idea that as record junkies, we are turning people on, and maybe my record is one that you've heard, but you haven't done a deep dive on, vice versa. It's very exciting.
Well, I think of myself as an Amoeba Records employee who doesn't work at Amoeba Records.
Sure.
But I'm still combing the aisles in my mind looking for that perfect thing to put on in the evening.
When I moved to Los Angeles, I was walking distance from the old Amoeba on Sunset.
Yes.
And I put some of those kids through college.
You did with the amount of money that you spent at Amoeba
I
Records?
put some of those kids through college. Yeah, it was maybe the noblest thing I've ever done. A lot of those kids are not mired in student loan debt because of me buying, Clinic and Ted Leo records there around 2003.
When you first moved to Los Angeles, did you have a job?
I was very lucky, and I got an acting job very soon after moving to LA.
Okay.
I got a pilot for a show that actually went to series, only 8 episodes, but it was a legal sitcom.
What was that?
I will be shocked. It was called AUSA,
AUSA.
which stands for Assistant United States Attorney, and that was problem number one. Was that nobody knew what an AUSA was. But it was a great cast. Scott Foley, Amanda Detmer, Peter Jacobson, Anna Ortiz, and myself. We were on after Frasier, and nobody cared. But we had this. It was still, it was TV money. Having just moved to LA, it was astonishing. And I had some lean years before that, so I made up for lost time by buying a lot of CDs at Amoeba.
Got it. Scott Foley?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And canceled, obviously?
Yeah,
Or did
canceled.
they just was it a mid-season pickup?
It was a mid-season pickup, and then we got canceled. And I'll tell you one very funny brief thing about it. There was a poll at the end of the TV season. Variety put out a poll of like shows that America would like to see picked up and shows America would like to see canceled. And AUSA was on neither list.
Yeah.
Apparently nobody cared if we lived or died. But we followed Frasier for 8 weeks, and either way, it got me out of my student loan debt promptly,
Right.
and I was able to buy a sensible mid-sized sedan, and nothing too flamboyant because I had already learned that that's like a risky thing. Anyway, point is, I was able to spend a lot of money at Amoeba.
You did not go out and buy a Lamborghini based on your first official sitcom
No, I did
job.
not. Although a guy involved in the production did lease a Porsche, and I thought that seems short-sighted,
Ambitious.
optimistic even.
It happens
It does.
in Los Angeles. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to lay this record on you, and I'm going to give you some math, some emotional math before I present this.
Heavy, man.
So the nominations for the 2025 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame have come out just now as we're recording this particular show. And there's the Black Crowes are on it, New Order and Joy Division.
Bad Company are on there.
Bad Company are on it.
Cyndi Lauper, which was kind of a
Lauper.
pleasant surprise to see on there.
Mariah Carey. But once again, 3 of my favorite bands are not on this list. You know, Iron Maiden.
Sure, obviously.
Not on the
Ditto,
list.
by the way. Every time they're nominated, I vote like hell for them. I vote like my fingers are going to come off.
If it doesn't happen next year, I'm going to jetpack into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame offices with a cue ball and a sock and a flamethrower.
Why would you not put Maiden in the Rock Hall of Fame? They're so fun. They're so good. They're still incredibly popular. They still fill arenas.
Quick tangent.
Yeah.
It's because they don't play the game.
No, I know there's a lot of politics involved,
Yeah.
and I know there's
And
even
money raising.
and I know that's part of it too. I get that.
Yeah.
But
You basically have to kick back to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to get in. It's a whole racket.
anyway.
Anyway, okay, Motorhead not in.
Oh, that's crazy.
And again, you would think that the band that I'm going to present you today, the album that I'm going to present you today, not nominated again. I think it's the biggest slight in the history of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Okay.
John Ross Bowie, I'm talking about the Monkees. And the record that I am going to lay on you today,
It's not the first one.
it's not the first one.
Wait, is it the horoscope one? The Pisces Aquarius?
Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones Limited.
Yeah.
The 4th studio album from the Monkees.
Wow.
This is Salesman. This is the first song. It's a Mike Nesmith heavy
Yeah,
record.
that's Nesmith
This is
singing,
Mike
right?
Nesmith on
that
lead
doesn't have
vocals.
Mickey's rasp.
Yeah.
There's a smoothness to Mike Nesmith's singing that I love. I don't think I know Salesman, or if
Yeah.
I've probably heard it, but I don't know it.
The biggest hit on this particular record
Pleasant Valley Sunday.
is nice.
Yeah, okay.
Wait, before we dive into that, how do you feel about the Monkees?
I love the Monkees. I genuinely am very, very fond of. You know what? Another thing I did when I lived walking distance from Amoeba, I also lived walking distance from the ArcLight Cinemas, may it rest. And they used to do a festival there every year called Don't Knock the Rock. Do you remember the Don't Knock
Yes.
the Rock festival? And I think Allison Anders and her daughter Tiffany used to curate it. The first one we went to would have been '02, and my wife and I went to go see a screening of Head with a Q&A with Peter Tork at the end of it. And
The
it was
Monkees movie that Jack Nicholson directed.
Bob Rafelson directed.
Oh, okay.
Nicholson co-wrote it. Although, could you check me on that, Richard? I don't mean to put you to work over here, but I'm 90% sure it's Rafelson directed and Nicholson. But it's the same. It's that same kind of like New Hollywood came out of the cauldron of Richard Corman.
Yeah.
Corman cauldron.
Yeah.
That movie's. I mean, it's a delightful mess, but it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Monkees shape my sense of humor. Aside from just being a great band with great songs, and we can get into like authorship and who was actually playing on the record. That's fine, but the sensibility of the Monkees of taking the anarchy present in Hard Day's Night and like just cranking it up to 11 is really, I'm hesitant to say influential, but it definitely is part of my cultural DNA. I think.
Okay, so did you watch the Monkees when they were on when you were a kid?
I did, yeah. I watched it even, they were in just reruns in the 70s before MTV picked it up.
That's right.
They were just on the same way Batman was on.
That's right.
In the afternoons.
For us in Pittsburgh, it was on, I think, after Gilligan's Island or Brady Bunch. It was the same thing every day, 3:30.
WPIX in New York, Channel 11. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was who did it. And we just had it's funny, we just had the first one, the Monkees record with, theme from and Last Train to Clarksville. But I remember very specifically we had a skip on I'll Be True to You, which is a very treacly Davy Jones ballad near the end of the record. I'll be true to you, true to you, true to you, true to you. And it just did that constantly. Not a skip, but a little hiccup, whatever you call it.
Head was directed by Rafelson and written by Rafelson, Nicholson, and Dolans.
Dolans has a writing credit on that. Oh, I don't think I realized that he actually wrote. Good for him. Yeah, that's a fascinating piece of work, Head. So tell me more about this album.
Well, the thing that I love about this record is that this comes at a very, I'm going to nerd out for a little bit.
Please.
This is the
what are we
fourth-
here for, if not this?
This is the 4th studio album by the Monkees. Okay, it went to number 1,
Now,
just like the previous ones did.
Has the secret about their not playing their own instruments broken yet?
It has.
Okay.
But this album also comes out after the band basically made a power play to gain more control over the creative process of making the records.
Okay.
Because basically in the very early days of the Monkees, all 4 guys were just cast.
Yeah, no, the casting tapes are amazing.
Right. The guys were just cast. The idea, everyone knows the idea for the show. You're capitalizing on Beatlemania. We're going to have 4 young guys in L.A.
The rather derogatory term prefab 4.
We're going to get guys who look like they hang out on the Sunset Strip circa 1965. And we're going to use some of the top songwriters and top session musicians in town to make pop hits.
Right.
And we're going to just create pop hits with this band. They're going to be on television. It will naturally work. It did. And in the early days, the Monkees would basically have to sing. Whoever had the lead vocal on a song would basically just sing to a pre-recorded track.
Right.
Track's already done. But these 4 guys, interestingly enough, telling people who might not know this, had some talent.
Yeah.
Mike Nesmith had talent.
Legitimate guitarist, legitimate songwriter.
Peter Tork was also a good musician.
Yeah.
And was also dialed in with the local scene, friends with Stephen Stills of Crosby, Stills and Nash fame.
Well, Stills auditioned too, unless I'm mistaken, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did, because they were friends. This is even pre-Buffalo Springfield.
Yeah.
Davy Jones can sing, and Mickey Dolenz.
Davy Jones was a musical theater kid.
As was Mickey Dolenz, because he was a child actor in L.A.
Yeah.
Also not naturally funny, but also a very good singer. So they, as the man, wanted them to tour, to sing, to make promotional appearance. They wanted more control over what they wanted to do. Don Kirshner, John Ross Bowie of Don Kirshner's Rock Concert.
Sure.
He was kind of in control of the music, and they were basically, I'm not going to get into the details, but they were able to basically wrestle control over him.
Wow.
And by the time it's time to do the 4th record, and this is the spring of 1967, they had more influence on this record. And some of them co-wrote some of the songs. They still had heavy hitters. Jerry Goffin and his wife, Carole King, wrote a song on this record. Hart and Boyce.
Yeah, sure.
They're on this. Lieber and Stoller are on this.
Oh, really?
But they were involved. They played musical instruments on this record. Interesting fact from this record, Mickey Dolenz was one of the first 20 people to own a Moog synthesizer.
Really?
Yes, because they were actually making money. Like I kind of did a deep dive about like how much money they were actually making. They were making good money.
Oh, were they?
As Monkees.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, because Don Kirshner tried to bribe them out of the whole idea of, having
creative control
by giving them royalty checks that were like basically worth like $3 million in today's money.
No
kidding. But Mickey Dolenz had a Moog, so it's used on 2 of the songs on this record. So I don't know. I just like the idea that there was a real fight. Like they were fighting for what the Monkees could be.
Right. Yeah, definitely. What's another banger off this record that you would love to draw my attention to?
Do you remember this? Maybe you remember this. Words. This is one of my favorite Monkees song. This is a song that was featured on the show. This was a song that had a little bit of a hit. Was a little bit of a hit for them. This is written by Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart, who were huge songwriters. They had a couple other hits with the Monkees.
I feel like they wrote I'm a Believer, those guys.
I believe that is Neil Diamond.
Oh, no, you're right. Oh, what am I thinking of? They wrote Last Train to Clarksville.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but this song is more ambitious. You want to turn it up for 2 seconds, Richard? Because we're going to get to the chorus in 2 seconds.
Key change.
Okay, it's often said that you can tell a lot about someone based on their favorite Beatle.
Yeah.
I believe that the same premise works for the Monkees.
I'm going to go out on a whim here, and we might have the same one. Do you want to do a countdown from 3 and we'll both go at the same time? All right. 3, 2, 1. Mike Nesmith.
To the point where
this is not planned. None of this was planned. I mean, I'm friends with Brendan, so it's sort of, inevitable that we have the same monkey, but I don't want anyone to think this was in any way scripted.
Okay, to the point where I tried to perpetrate the ski hat look.
Oh,
Circa
wow.
7th, 8th, 9th grade. Mm-hmm. Didn't work. Couldn't pull it off.
Few can.
Like he did. Few can. Like he did.
The other thing that's great about Mike Nesmith, aside from the fact that, he has, I think, the first, because Papa Jean's Blues is on the first Monkees record, and it's a Mike Nesmith composition.
Yes.
And it's a banger. But he also, his post-Monkees career is fascinating. He becomes a massive film producer.
A video auteur.
He produces Repo Man, one of my all-time favorite films, and does a wonderful commentary on the DVD, should you ever get around to it. Come over to my house sometime and watch Repo Man with Alex Cox and Mike Nesmith doing the commentary. Because 70 minutes in, Nesmith goes, now this is where the film gets a little surreal. I'm like, just now, Mike? Really? Just now? Okay. He produced Tapeheads.
Yeah.
Which is a very singular piece of work by itself. And yeah, then there's Elephant Parts, all the interesting sort of TV specials he was doing for cable early on. He was a really, really interesting guy.
Can I give you my favorite Mike Nesmith song off this record?
Please.
What Am I Doing Hanging Round?
Okay.
Pen name on the record, but it was actually written by Michael Martin Murphy of Wildfire fame. speaking of yacht rock.
Okay, now you've stumped me. You've sub-referenced me, my friend. Which ones were Wildfire? Who did?
She ran calling wildfire.
Okay.
She ran calling wild. That's Michael Martin Murphy.
Okay, well, let's listen to the song in question here.
Yeah.
Hang on.
But I found myself thinking when the time had come to go. What am I doing hanging round? I should be on that train and gone.
See this, just to tie it back to what we were discussing earlier, this sounds like If America Kicked Ass. I'm sorry, I meant the band America. I want to make that very clear.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, if America could plug up a little bit.
If America could, if they had a little more of that Black Sabbath cocaine.
Okay.
Just to but it's, that's wonderful. That's a great song. That's really beautiful.
That's one of my favorite Monkey songs. Do you know Harry Nilsson
Yeah, sure.
wrote a song
Oh, that
on
makes
this
sense.
record?
Yeah, okay. Which one?
He wrote the song Cuddly Toy, which is not a famous Monkey song.
It's okay.
But the fact that Harry Nilsson was circling around the Monkees.
You're talking to a guy who loves Anti Griselda, by the way, so I don't mind a deep cut when it comes to Monkees.
Nilsson.
Yeah, that's Nilsson. Does Davey have lead vocals on this? Oh, God, that's Harry Nilsson, yeah.
The only cuddly toy that was ever enjoyed by any boy.
Now, I said Mike was my favorite.
Yeah.
But as I get older, I have much more
Was left out in the rain.
appreciation for Mickey Dolenz because he's doing co-lead vocals on this song.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I get Mickey Dolenz' actual prowess as a performer.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
He was the funny monkey.
He was well. They were all funny, but he had a daring in his acting. You could even say,
Yeah.
And Nesmith's stuff. Nesmith's, I hesitate to say shtick, but his style was very deadpan. And Davey was cute and Peter was dumb, but Mickey Dolenz was sort of the Jim Carrey of the group. I mean, he had a real
Yes.
I will go there, I'll do impressions. There was a whole thing with him. He's a very dynamic performer and interesting too because often stuck behind the drum kit, whether he belonged there or not.
Didn't belong there.
No.
Didn't play drums.
No.
Kind of learned how to play drums. Okay, let me do one last thing. I'm going
Please.
to play one more song. And this is a double banger for me because this is my favorite song on the record. It's a weird one. It's called Star Collector. Star Collector,
All right.
written by Carole King and her husband, Jerry
Goffin,
Goffin. And this song is one of the 2 songs on the record to use the Moog synthesizer.
Oh, nice.
And this is literally one of the first records, period, to use the Moog synthesizer, which is crazy
Yeah.
because it became such a staple of fucking record making.
Yeah, during the next 10 years, it became incredibly...
Nice knowing you. She's a star collector. She
even really want to say Collector. I feel like there was an earlier draft of this song that
Collector.
that maybe isn't quite so polite. From judging from the lyrical content about this woman who is hanging out with the famous, I feel like Collector might have been a second draft.
Understood.
That was a fight they lost with Don Kirshner.
John, it's a problem that's been around in rock and roll since the dawn of time.
People want to curse.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
That's good, though. I like that. Taking that bass for a walk. Really nice.
So that is my gift to you. Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones Limited.
When does that record come out? 68?
67. November 67.
God, that's lovely. November 67. So it's it's a few months after Sgt. Pepper's.
Yes, and if you really nerd out on this record,
Please.
they were all exposed to Sgt. Pepper's. They'd already met the Beatles.
Right.
The Beatles liked them, enjoyed them.
Yeah. I imagine there was probably a part of the Beatles that were like, that looks really fun. You know, like, I mean, it would be nice to like.
Lennon said that.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Interesting.
Lennon said that to them.
Yeah, I mean, like, and obviously, the Beatles are great, but there comes a point where the Beatles, around just post Help, I would say, where they start to take themselves seriously, and as they should, and but there had to be a part of them that was like, it might be kind of fun to like have a dumb show with like, pie fights,
but also the crazy directing that they would do, and all the camera cutting that they would use to do special effects and all that. Like the Beatles totally got that, and actually, John Lennon said, "They're not like us; they're more like the Marx Brothers." Was basically his quote.
Oh,
I'm paraphrasing,
wow.
but he said, "You guys are more."
Of
like
which
them.
I'm also a huge fan, actually, which makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's it exactly. That's the math. That is absolutely the math. Is that the Monkees are the Marx Brothers meet the Beatles with a little less artistic autonomy or agency. But that is exactly right. There's a ton of Marx Brothers in there. That's right. God.
And they got to do Help basically on network television.
Yeah, once a week.
So there you go. It's my gift to you.
So it's interesting. You mentioned a fighting record. You characterized this Monkees record as a fighting record because it's them fighting with their producer in the or their manager really, and fighting obviously with the network and all the other people they were struggling with. I also have a fighting record, and it will probably not come as a huge surprise which one I've picked. This was a lot of internal. This is a band fighting with itself, fighting with its hands-on record producer, and sort of fighting with what it meant to be the Ramones. I'm speaking, of course, of End of the Century, their fifth record, which was produced by Phil Spector. It is actually the last full-length record that Phil Spector produced. He went on to do a few singles before he
Killed somebody.
Listen, we need to separate the art from the artist on this one.
I totally understand.
Okay? We really need to. I'm going to need you.
But if you
to
love murder
separate
and you love Los Angeles, the
Boy.
Phil Spector murder is a good one.
Yep. Great one. The mansion in Alhambra. Still there. You can,
Alhambra.
You can inexplicably, even though somebody was murdered in the lobby, rent it for weddings, other occasions, bar
do that?
mitzvahs. I won't know who would do that. It was somebody who doesn't like to spend too much time online. Someone who maybe just goes wedding venue, sees the facade of the building and goes, that's good enough for me. I don't need to know the history. And then just moves on.
It's been appropriately saged. But let's go back. Let's go back to the record.
The record itself.
Okay.
So End of the Century is really interesting. So this is their fifth record. Phil Spector is a massive fan. He hears in the Ramones a return to rock and roll's primacy. He hears in them a very straightforward 3 or 4 chord approach to music, and he views it, much like I do, actually, as sort of an antidote to, with all due respect to your T-shirt, prog rock, or the more mythological elements of heavy metal, your Zeppelins and such.
But he gets that the Ramones love 50s, early 60s music.
Yeah, and he justifiably hears a little bit of his sudden ex-wife, Ronnie Spector, in Joey's vocals, which is a fascinating dynamic. But Joey is able to pull off that the way Ronnie could, to remarkable effect, and he hounds them for several albums to please, guys, let me produce you, and they're very hesitant to do that. They work with
Because they've heard he's crazy?
no, it's not even that. They've heard he's crazy, but they're so used to working very quickly, very cheaply,
Yes.
and just getting albums out. Because they banged out like an album a year for 5 years there. They really just
Do you know how
cranked
long
them
it took
out.
them to make the first Ramones record?
A week. A week. Produced by Craig Leon. It is you can now get the mono mix, but the stereo mix, famously, you know the deal with the stereo mix, right?
I do not.
The guitars are in one channel, the bass is in the other, so you can knock Johnny entirely out. And if you wanted to, you could learn to play bass by just listening to Dee Dee's parts.
That's you.
Because they're unmasked. All you had to do was move, like any idiot in his high school bedroom could move the balance knob to the left, and suddenly he's got Dee Dee's isolated bass track,
I learned something today.
which was fascinating. So Spector decides that he wants to get his hands on these guys, and he wants to kind of play with their sound. But what's interesting is that the things he loves about the Ramones, the simplicity, the directness of their songwriting, it isn't that he squashes that. He just wants to polish it so much. So much.
By doing what?
Just take after take after take
okay.
after take.
Okay.
Depending. Now, what's interesting is that everyone. Now, here's where the band is fighting with itself. You've got Joey dealing with a few specific mental illnesses. Johnny is surly. His father dies during the course of the recording. Dee Dee relapses with his heroin problem. Marky's drinking. None that you can't get a straight answer out of exactly what went down. So there's some people who said, oh, they did 30 takes of the first chord in Rock and Roll High School. Some people said it got up to 50. Some people, Dee Dee claims he had a gun pulled on him at one point.
By Phil Spector.
By Phil Spector. Because of all this drama, quick plug, I wrote a play about this because I thought it was such an interesting, sort of chunk of musical history that was also so... Because there's no like set story, I kind of went in and was able to play with it a little bit more. Because no one can agree on what the exact story is about how badly it went, but it was apparently chaos. The resulting record, however, I really, really enjoy because of all the layering and overdubs. There's an enormous guitar sound on this record. If we can do, if you could pull up for me, Let's Go off this record. This closes side 1. That's a thick guitar sound. And then listen to all the reverb on the vocals. Now, it's still a Ramones song. He's singing about being like a mercenary. He's literally being like a soldier of fortune or whatever. Let's go. It's interesting because he decides to make the album. It almost sounds like a Who album to a certain extent because the guitars are so enormous.
Yeah.
And they sound thicker than any album previous. Now, there are those who will say, well, apparently Phil brought in some session guys. A lot of people think it's more of a Joey solo record. Dee Dee claims he didn't play bass on it. The other three are like, no, Dee Dee was there. He played bass. There's a lot of controversy surrounding that aspect of it. Jim Keltner, who had played with George Harrison, came in and played drums occasionally. Ed Stasium, who is a producer of great renown, still with us, lives in San Diego. He had produced the previous album, Road to Ruin, which has Sedated on it. A lot of great stuff on that record. He plays guitar. He was sort of hanging out to sort of chime in and help out. But it was a very, very contentious record to make. And it took much, much longer than they expected it to.
79?
Comes out, recorded in 79, comes out beginning of 80. Comes out February of 1980.
So do you feel like it at least captured New York? Because they were always amazing at capturing the sound of New York when they were recording.
No, because they recorded it right over here at Gold Star Studios.
They recorded it in Los Angeles.
Recorded it in Los Angeles.
I learned two things today.
They recorded it at, which is over near Santa Monica and Vine.
Oh.
Or at least it was at the time. And it's interesting because, and it's very specifically an album about the perils of being road musicians. There's a lot of talk about. There's a beautiful song called Danny Says that's written about their manager, Danny Fields, but is in fact just sort of I can't be near my baby because of work. It's basically Beth. It's their Beth by Kiss.
They took a stab at something like that.
Yeah, here it is.
I have a question for you after this. Oh, yeah. That's
Right? You know, so I guess that's like a 12-string
different.
guitar up there or something. I don't think. But what's nice about this, yes, you've got the little like music box chimes and everything, but it builds, and by the time you're at like the second chorus, the full guitars are in and the drums are in, and it's a whole piece.
Right. So this is not about a transvestite hooker being killed on the Lower East Side.
No, that would be 53rd and 3rd, which is actually not the Lower East Side. It's the Midtown East Side. But yes, that's... no, you see, even that, though... Are you thinking of another song?
No.
Okay, 53rd and 3rd is
Just
about...
thinking about themes
no, it's
of
about
Ramones songs.
It's about a male hustler killing one of his tricks.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, but yeah. So yeah, thank you for fast forwarding a little bit. So that's a Ramones song. You hear it now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you hear that Beach Boys influence, and but you also hear like the big echoey drum sound that Spector was famous for, that whole wall of sound thing that he was into.
Do you know? I'm sure you do.
Pardon me.
What's the first sit down between the Ramones and Phil Spector like? Do you know? Do they meet at Katz's Deli? Do they meet at the 2nd Avenue Deli on the Upper East Side? Like, do they have
They
a
allegedly
sit-down?
meet at the Whiskey.
Oh,
And then he
here
has
in
them-
Los Angeles.
Here in Los Angeles, he went to go see them when they were touring.
Oh.
And he lived on La Colina at the time, which is like just at the end of what we would call the Strip before
Yeah.
you get into residential Beverly Hills.
Yes.
Right? He lived in a big house over there, and he invited them over, this enormous place.
He's not yet killed somebody.
He is not. It's years before. It's a good 25 years before he's going to kill anybody.
Okay.
And it's actually a really interesting story, and I put it in the play because this is one thing that everyone agrees on. It's really weird. He has them over, and he decides, we're going to watch a movie. I have a screening room downstairs. And, these guys are 4 guys who live in New York apartments. The idea of somebody with a screening room in their house is just alien. This is just Star Wars level shit for them. I grew up in New York City. The idea of someone having a screening room is absurd to me. Takes them down. They watch a film called Magic, which is a 1979 horror film starring Anthony Hopkins as a ventriloquist whose dummy takes over.
Sure.
So, what's interesting about that is the more you think about it, it's this sort of interesting metaphor of like, so who's really in control, the puppet or the puppet master? And then they spend like 6 months working on this record contentiously, power grabs all over the place. There's a love triangle going on within the band. Johnny steals Joey's girlfriend and marries her.
That's the crime that kind of really begins the end of the Ramones, correct?
Except for the fact that they went on for another 16 years.
Understood.
They
Yes.
were coworkers
Right.
who just did not like each
But
other.
that-
But here's the punchline. After everything we've just talked about
Yes.
and all this chaos, no album by the Ramones sold as much as End of the Century.
Oh, is that true? This
is their highest charting album.
This album sold more than the first one.
Oh,
which
God, yes.
Now everyone feels like that's like one of the greatest records ever recorded of all time.
100%.
I've learned 3 things today.
It sold more. It was, and I obviously I don't have this at the ready, but I looked it up this afternoon. 44 on the United States Billboard, 14 on the UK Billboard.
They love the Ramones over
They
there.
love their runs. They would play bigger venues over there than they would here.
Yes.
A really interesting piece of music history, and
Because it's a
filled with great
marriage of
songs.
2 things that should have never been married.
No, because what's so interesting about it is you've got like one of the most meticulously hardworking producers, so psychopathically hardworking producers, with a band that was like quick and dirty, get it done, bang this out in a week. What's next, kind of thing, you know? And they would pride themselves on cramming as many songs as they could into an hour for their sets, and then they'd come out and do a couple encores. But they would do like an hour-long Ramones set. I got to see them a few times in the mid '80s when Dee Dee was still with the band. You'd get like 27 songs in that hour.
Right.
They would really just crank them out. And they would do you remember Rock and Roll Radio, but with Dee Dee on bass doing the saxophone part, the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
In the early days of MTV, before Billie Jean, that was one of the staples.
It was. Yes, that was a
The
staple.
video for that song was one of the
And
staples.
as was Rock and Roll High School, which is also on this record. The Phil Spector, there's 2 versions. There's an Ed Stasian produced version, which is very bare bones and sounds like the way we think Ramones songs are supposed to sound.
Yep.
And then there's the more epic one that they, you'll be shocked to learn, used for the video, which is the Phil Spector version. And that's the one that starts with this ringing guitar chord that apparently is like take number 60 or whatever.
Before he murders, how did Phil Spector come to view this particular record in his pantheon of records?
It's hard to say. You know, he
Would it have been something he would have been proud of? Did you
I
ever,
think
ever
it
read
was.
it? In your research of putting the play together, did you
He
ever
doesn't talk about it too much. Johnny hates the record, or hated the record.
Mm-hmm.
No one we're speaking about except for Marky the drummer is still alive.
Mm-hmm, right.
No one from that first Ramones record is alive.
That's crazy.
There are more Rolling Stones alive than there are
Wow.
Ramones,
Wow.
original Ramones.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? Anyway, but yeah, he didn't speak of it too often. He was weirdly reclusive, you know, and, you know, which is why he moved, you know, sort of out to the outskirts of the county and eventually killed a hostess from the House of Blues, which, you know, obviously puts a bit of a damper on the story. But remember, their highest selling record, number 44 on the Billboard charts.
I've learned 5 things today.
It's a really fun record, particularly side one, and I still think of things in terms of album sides because I'm 53.
Yeah.
But it's really delightful, and if you think you know the record, I would suggest you go back and give it another shot. And if you don't know it, oh, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I love the Ramones. I love you. I love Phil
you.
Spector.
Yeah, he had his moments.
Yeah, he. Well, speaking of the Monkees, you know, a lot of those musicians that worked on the Monkees album were all Wrecking Crew guys too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Wrecking Crew guys on that. John, I think it's time to pull the bus into the garage.
Okay. Are we done with this gig?
I think we're done with this gig.
Is it time
now.
to clean up and pack the amps into the van?
Absolutely.
What's our dumb metaphor we're going to close with?
You know
I
what?
like bus in the garage. That's not bad.
Here we go. Record junkies. We'll pull the bus into the garage.
Closing out the gig by rolling up the cables. Whatever.